Welcome to the world of sci-fi stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. When humanity's warship entered the battlefield, the galaxy trembled. The mysterious arrival, it was a quiet day on the alien planet of Zerka. The skies were clear, the air still. The inhabitants of Zerka, a powerful and advanced alien race, lived in peace, their cities shining under the glow of their twin suns. But little did they know that peace was about to be shattered. Far beyond their stars in the deep reaches of space, a massive ship moved closer. It was like nothing any alien race had seen before. At first, the Zerkan thought it was just another stray meteor or perhaps a piece of space debris. But soon they realized it wasn't natural at all. The ship emerged from a distant nebula glowing with an eerie light. It was vast, so vast that it blocked out the stars in its wake, casting a shadow over the surrounding space. The Zerin scanners had picked it up, but they couldn't make sense of it. It wasn't like anything in their records, nothing like the ships of any known species. This was something new, something that could not be ignored. The Zerkan watched in awe and fear as the ship slowly moved toward their planet. It didn't announce its arrival. It didn't give any signs of aggression or warning. It simply appeared, moving with a calm, controlled purpose. The Zerkan tried to send messages to it, but they received nothing in return. It was as if the ship had no interest in communication, only in reaching its destination. The alien leaders, once comfortable in their dominance, were now on edge. The ship's arrival disrupted everything they knew. The planet's brightest minds were called upon to study this phenomenon. They began analyzing every possible detail about the ship, but the more they learned, the less they understood. The ship didn't seem to have any visible weapons or defensive systems. It wasn't shaped like a typical warrior ship, nor did it resemble any civilian vessel. Its surface was smooth, almost as if it was alive, shifting in ways that seemed unnatural to the Zerkan. The ship's energy readings were off the charts, far beyond what they had ever seen before. It wasn't just advanced, it was beyond their comprehension. As the ship drew nearer to Zerka, panic began to spread. Some of the more cautious leaders suggested that they should prepare for war, but others, more fearful, argued that they should send their strongest fleet to confront the unknown force before it reached the planet. They were divided. Some feared the ship's power, others didn't believe that anything could threaten them. The Zerkan had never been so uncertain. Their empire had stood for thousands of years, undefeated by any species they had encountered. They had wiped out entire civilizations with ease, so the idea of an unknown ship arriving seemingly without purpose or explanation was unsettling. They had no idea who it was or what they wanted. The leaders convened in their council chambers, but the atmosphere was tense. The planet's most experienced general scientists and diplomats all gathered in a large room, staring at the massive holographic display in front of them. The image of the mysterious ship was projected, looming larger than life. They were all silent, unsure of what to say. The room buzzed with quiet murmurs as the situation grew more dire. "The ship is closing in," one of the generals said, his voice trembling. "We must act now." But the scientist in the corner shook his head. "We don't know enough. There's no sign of hostility. It could just be an explorer." "An explorer?" another general scoffed. "No explorer would come so close without warning. This is an invasion." The debate grew heated. The Zerkan, known for their strength and unity, were now divided, their confidence shaken by the unknown. The fear of the unknown grew stronger with each passing minute. Some prepared for war, others for diplomacy, but no one truly knew what to expect. Then a voice cut through the noise, a voice that was both calm and commanding. It came from the leader of the Zerin Council, a figure known for their wisdom and foresight. She stood up slowly, her eyes fixed on the projection of the ship. "Enough," she said. "We don't know who they are. We don't know what they want, but one thing is clear: they are not like us. We must prepare, but we must also learn. Send out our scouts. See if we can communicate. We must not act out of fear, but out of reason." The room fell silent. The leader's words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of the unknown. The decision was made. Zerka would watch, study, and wait. The mysterious ship continued its course toward their planet, and the Zerkan had no choice but to prepare for whatever came next. As the days passed, the ship continued to low closer. Its presence Impossible to ignore the tension on Zerka, built as everyone from the highest council members to the common citizens could feel the weight of what was happening. Fears spread through the streets like wildfire, and whispers of what might come next circulated in every corner of the planet. The Zerkin could only wait, unable to do anything else. As the shadow of the mysterious ship grew larger and larger in the sky, what did it want? Who sent it? And why had it come to their peaceful planet? The answers were still unknown, but one thing was certain. The arrival of this ship would change everything for the Zerkin. Their world would never be the same again. The battleship's reputation as the mysterious ship drew closer to the Zuran planet. Rumors began to spread. The Zerkin, though technologically advanced and confident in their might, were not strangers to the vastness of space. They knew that beyond their borders lay countless species, some powerful, some dangerous. Yet none had ever sent a ship like this one. For years, whispers had passed through the galaxy about a human fleet, stories told of human, small, seemingly fragile creatures compared to the immense races of the galaxy, fighting with a ferocity and strength unlike anything seen before. These stories were legends, dismissed by many as mere fables, but the fear they inspired could not be ignored. The Zerkin, who prided themselves on their intelligence and power, found themselves growing anxious. Could this be the fabled humanity? The tales spoke of human warriors who could survive against overwhelming odds. There were reports of human fleets defeating entire armadas of much larger, more advanced alien forces. How could such a race with their limited size and resources be so feared among the Zuran leaders? A council of generals and strategists worked tirelessly to analyze the incoming ship. They pored over old records, examining the few scraps of information they had on humanity's previous battles. It was clear humanity's military was unlike anything the Zuran had encountered before. One by one, they went through the reports. In one battle, humans had destroyed an entire alien fleet, their tactics simple yet devastating. Another report told of a human general known only as the commander who had led a small fleet to victory against a much larger force. The commander's reputation for quick thinking and ruthless efficiency had spread across the galaxy, striking fear into even the strongest enemy. The more the Zerkin learned about humanity, the more they realized they were dealing with something extraordinary. It wasn't just the technology of their ships that made them dangerous, it was their spirit. Humans had the will to survive and the drive to never surrender, even when faced with certain death. This made them unpredictable and incredibly dangerous. As the reports piled up, a sense of dread began to settle over the Zerkin. Could this human fleet, this force that had conquered so much of the galaxy, really be on their doorstep? What would happen if they were truly here? The possibility was both terrifying and humbling. The Zerkin generals could not ignore the chilling thought they might be facing their end in their vast empire. No one had ever dared challenge them on this scale. They had crushed countless civilizations, but the stories of humanity made them question whether they could hold their ground. It was not long before the Alien Council convened to discuss the terrifying possibility that the ship belonged to humanity. There was an air of uncertainty as the leaders gathered. The room was filled with debate, each leader offering a different perspective. Some were confident they could repel the invaders with their superior firepower, while others feared that such an approach would only provoke a massacre. A wise old leader known for his experience in military strategy stood up. The problem with these is that they do not fight like us. Their ships are small, but their will is immense. We could destroy their fleet, but we would risk provoking something far worse. The reputation of humanity is not that of an invincible species, but one that refuses to bow down. They will fight until their last breath. His words silenced the room for the first time. The Zerkin questioned their own superiority. The stories of human resistance had sharpened their belief that no force could threaten them. The reputation of humanity was now real, not just a tale told across the galaxy. And if they were to face humanity, they would have to consider all the possibilities, not just their usual tactics. The fear that had begun to spread through the ranks now gripped the Zerkin completely. The ship that was approaching their planet could be the beginning of something they had never encountered before, not just a battle, but a war with humanity itself. In the end, the decision was made. The Zuran generals and leaders knew that they had to act, but they weren't sure how to respond. Could they fight this enemy, or would Humanity's reputation of fierce, unyielding resistance led them to a victory they could not afford to lose. As the days passed, the tension among the Zircon reached its peak. The ship, with its mysterious and terrifying reputation, drew closer, and the Zircon could no longer ignore the possibility that their world might soon be changed forever. They now understood that they weren't just facing another alien force. They were facing the arrival of something much more dangerous: humanity itself. The alien leader's dilemma as the massive ship continued its slow, inevitable approach toward the Zircon homeworld. The alien leaders were thrown into turmoil. There had never been a time when their empire had faced a threat they could not understand. But now everything had changed. The Zircon had been supreme rulers of the galaxy for thousands of years. Their military was unmatched, their technology advanced beyond the wildest dreams of most species. Yet here they were faced with the unknown, and for the first time in their long reign, doubt crept into their minds. The council room was filled with tension. A holographic map of the approaching battleship loomed in the center, casting an eerie glow across the room. It was impossible to ignore the size of the ship, its mere presence a reminder of the coming conflict. The alien leaders, generals, and strategists sat around the table, faces grim and eyes uncertain. The High Commander, a seasoned veteran of countless battles, was the first to speak. "We cannot sit idle. We must prepare our forces immediately. This ship is not a diplomatic envoy. It is a weapon. If humanity is indeed behind this, we are facing a threat unlike any we have ever encountered." But not all of the leaders agreed. A younger, more optimistic member of the council, Vice Commander Trixer, spoke up. "We have always prided ourselves on our intelligence, our ability to outthink our enemies. Perhaps this ship is here for peaceful purposes. We should send a message, try to communicate. Humanity is a young species. Surely they understand the value of diplomacy." Tricker's words were met with a mixture of skepticism and disdain. Diplomacy? General Zarek, one of the oldest and most respected figures in the council, grumbled. "Do you truly think that humanity would send such a massive force to negotiate? No tricks. They are here to conquer. We've heard the stories. We know what they are capable of. They are coming for us." The room erupted into argument as the leaders debated. Some pushed for immediate action, preparing their forces for a confrontation, while others, including Trickar, wanted to at least try and understand the humans' intentions before deciding whether to go to war. The more the council argued, the more divided they became. This wasn't just a military decision. It was a question of how to respond to a completely unknown force. Tension in the council room escalated. The fear of the unknown noted every leader, each trying to convince the others of the right course of action. Some generals called for a full-scale mobilization of the Zircon fleet, while others argued that such an act could lead to unnecessary bloodshed. No one knew for sure whether humanity's arrival meant war or peace. As the heated debate continued, the eldest member of the council, leader Thick, finally stood and called for silence. His voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the chaos. "We have stood as the strongest power in the galaxy for countless millennia," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "But today we face something we haven't ever seen before. We may be the largest, the most powerful, but we are not invincible." The tales of humanity's will to survive, to fight for what they believe in, are not just stories. They are truth. If we face them, we must do so with respect and with caution. His words struck a chord. For a moment the council members fell silent, their uncertainty palpable. His wisdom had always been their guide, and though his words carried weight, they were not easy to hear. "We must prepare." "Yes," that continued, "but we must also be ready to negotiate. We will send a delegation to meet this force, but we will also begin mobilizing our fleet. This is a time for both strength and diplomacy. We will face humanity not with arrogance, but with the recognition that we may be dealing with a force that does not think like us, does not fight like us." The decision was made. The Zircon would attempt to communicate, to open a dialogue with the incoming battleship. But at the same time, their military preparations would continue. They would not risk being unprepared, but they would not rush to war either. They would test humanity's true intentions. As the leaders left the council chamber, each was filled with a sense of unease. Could they reason with this mysterious force? Or would they be forced into battle? The Zircon, for the first time in their history, did not have the answer. The battle ahead was not just about weapons and strategy. It was about understanding humanity itself. The coming days would determine whether the Zircon could coexist with this new force, or whether humanity's reputation for fierce independence and relentless courage would lead to a war that neither side could afford to lose. Humanity's show of force as the Zuran leaders debated their course of action. The massive battleship that loomed in their skies remained silent, its presence growing ever more ominous. It seemed to be waiting as though observing the alien world below. The Zircon, still unsure of humanity's intentions, had no choice but to act, preparing for the worst. However, they had no way of knowing that humanity's next move would strike fear into their hearts, leaving them with a terrifying message. They couldn't ignore the human commander aboard the battleship. Known only as the Commander was calm and collected as the ship approached the alien planet. While the Zircon spent their time preparing for battle, the Commander was already steps ahead, having anticipated the alien response for humans. This wasn't a battle for territory. It was a demonstration of what they were capable of when pushed to the edge. The Commander had learned of the Zircon reputation, how they had conquered many worlds, how they were known for their strength and ruthlessness. But humanity's reputation wasn't just about power, it was about resilience, courage, and unity. The Commander knew that it wasn't enough to simply engage in a fight. The Zircon needed to understand who they were dealing with. They needed to realize that humanity was not a race to be underestimated. The battleship, a massive fortress in space, was equipped with unimaginable firepower far beyond anything the Zircon had ever encountered. The ship's weaponry, designed for planetary destruction, was both beautiful and terrifying. The Zircon had no idea that humans had perfected the art of warfare not just through technology, but through a sheer will to survive. They were about to see that firsthand. With a deliberate, calculated move, the Commander ordered the first demonstration of humanity's power. A single devastating pulse of energy was fired from the battleship, aimed directly at one of Zura's moons. The Zircon watched in horror as the moon, once a peaceful celestial body, was ripped apart by the blast, shattered into 1,000 fragments. The explosion could be seen from the surface of their planet, a violent reminder of the destructive power that humanity wielded. The message was clear: this is what you face if you choose to fight. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise of what could happen if the Zircon refused to stand down. In the council chambers of Zirka, the leaders were struck silent. They had always believed themselves to be the most powerful species in the galaxy. Now they had witnessed firsthand what humanity was capable of, and it was unlike anything they had ever seen before. The destruction of the moon wasn't just a show of power, it was a warning. Humanity didn't need to fight with entire fleets. They could do what they had to with precision, with skill, and with an unmatched level of force. Some Zuran leaders were shaken to their core, their once unshakable confidence in their superiority now broken. General Zark, who had always advocated for aggression, stood frozen in disbelief. How could they do that so easily? He muttered. One shot destroyed an entire moon. Vice Commander Trixer, who had once suggested diplomacy, looked out the window of the council room, his thoughts racing. He had hoped to avoid conflict, but now it seemed clear humanity wasn't here for negotiations. The ship that hovered in the skies was not a diplomatic envoy, it was a force of nature. The council room was filled with a heavy silence as the alien leaders processed what had just happened. The destruction of the moon was not only a physical display of humanity's strength, but it was also a psychological blow. It demonstrated their willingness to take extreme action, to strike without hesitation, and to use their power without mercy. But even as the fear set in, there were still some who believed that they could face humanity head-on. We cannot let this display of power break us, General Zarek said, trying to regain his composure. If we fall back now, if we show weakness, we will never regain control of the galaxy. Yet even as Zarnak spoke, the doubt among the Zuran leaders grew. They now knew that their once great empire might not be enough to stop the human battleship. As the Zircon debated their next move, the commander aboard the battleship watched silently. There would be no further displays of force, at least not for now. The commander had already made their point. It was now up to the Zircon to decide whether they would engage in battle or whether they would surrender. The Zircon had had no choice but to face the reality that the humans were not like the others they had conquered. They were not just another alien species to subdue. Humanity had arrived, and they had arrived to show that they would never be intimidated, never be conquered, and never be stopped. The question now was, would the Zircon stand down and submit, or would they continue to fight a battle they were not certain they could win? Alien resistance grows despite the overwhelming power humanity had demonstrated, aided with the destruction of the moon. Not all hope was lost for the Zircon. In fact, the shock wave of fear that had spread through the Zuran leadership soon gave way to something more dangerous: defiance. A faction of Zuran military leaders composed of the younger generation of warriors who had not known the overwhelming defeat that their elders had seen began to rise. They viewed the destruction of the moon not as a warning, but as a challenge, an opportunity to prove their strength. They were the ones who still believed in their superiority, those who did not think that humanity's show of force could truly crush the Zuran Empire. General Karen, one of the fiercest and most ambitious of the young leaders, was the first to rally behind this resistance. He was convinced that the Zircon could defeat humanity. In his eyes, the destruction of the moon was nothing more than a calculated move to intimidate, and he believed that the Zur military was more than capable of handling the human threat. We cannot allow them to make us bow down in fear, General Karen declared to his supporters. We must unite all our forces. We will meet them in the void of space, and we will show them that Zirka does not yield. Karen's words found their mark with many of the younger Zircon eager to prove themselves on the battlefield. These leaders began preparing their own fleet, gathering their best ships and most skilled warriors. They believed that the Zuran military had one strength that humanity could not understand: unity. They had always fought together, and in their hearts they believed that this unity, paired with their superior numbers, could win the day. However, the more experienced members of the Zuran Council, who had seen the power of humanity firsthand, try to reason with the young generals. Do not underestimate them, warned Leader Thick, his voice steady yet filled with concern. Humanity does not fight like we do. They do not rely on size or numbers. They rely on their resolve. Their ability to win against all odds, to turn the tide in an instant, is what makes them dangerous. But General Kiran was undeterred. He dismissed warnings as nothing more than a fear of the unknown. We are Zircon, he said, his voice full of pride. We will not be defeated by a race of primitive beings. We will show them our power, and they will bend to our will. The resistance began to gain momentum, and soon they had a significant portion of the Zuran fleet ready to face the humans head-on. The strategy was simple: a direct assault on the human battleship. Their plan was to overwhelm it with sheer force, using the full strength of their armada to break through humanity's defenses. They believed that humanity, despite their advanced technology, could be worn down by their numbers. As the Zircon continued their preparations for battle, humanity's battleship watched in silence. The commander aboard the ship had anticipated such a reaction. The Zircon were proud and unyielding, and they would not simply surrender after one show of force. The commander understood this and knew that they needed to be ready for the coming conflict. What the Zircon didn't realize, however, was that humanity's strength was not solely in their technology. It was in their unity, their creativity, and their ability to think outside the box. The commander had already begun to deploy a series of tactical countermeasures designed to exploit the weaknesses of the Zuran fleet. The first sign that the Zircon had underestimated humanity came when their fleet attempted to engage the battleship. As the massive Zuran armada closed in, the battleship's weapons powered up, ready to unleash a devastating strike. But to their surprise, the human ship did not fight the way they had expected. Instead of charging forward and engaging directly, the battleship vanished into the depths of space, using a cloaking system that the Zircon hadn't anticipated. Confusion and panic spread through the Zuran fleet. They had expected a brutal and direct conflict, but now they were faced with an enemy that could not be tracked. It was like fighting a ghost, and the Zircon had no idea where the next strike would come from. The resistance within the Zuran fleet began to crumble. General Kiran's confidence quickly turned into frustration, and his warriors found themselves unable to anticipate the movements of the human battleship. The once unified Zirran fleet became disorganized, with their forces scattered and confused by the human tactics. Humanity's battleship, though smaller and less numerous than the Zircon fleet, was far more agile and strategic. Each Zirran attack was met with a quick counterattack, outmaneuvering the larger, slower ships. The Zircon had underestimated the human resolve, and they were now paying the price for their arrogance. As the conflict raged on, it became clear that the human fleet wasn't just a force to be reckoned with. They were a force that adapted, that evolved in the heat of battle, and the Zircon, with their pride and their resistance, were beginning to realize the truth. Humanity was not just a threat, it was a species that could not be defeated by sheer numbers or firepower alone. The resistance had underestimated the humans' spirit, and it would cost them dearly. The battle for Zirka was only just beginning. But it was clear that the humans would not be so easily defeated. The human commander strategy, as the Zirran fleet faltered under the pressure of humanity's unexpected tactics, a quiet, determined calm settled over the human commander. While the Zircon scrambled to regroup, humanity's battleship continued its precise maneuvers, staying just out of reach, never fully engaging in an all-out war, but always making its presence felt. The commander understood that this battle was not just about firepower, it was about strategy and patience. In the command center of the human battleship, the atmosphere was focused and intense. The crew worked tirelessly, processing real-time intelligence gathered from the ongoing conflict and making adjustments as the battle progressed. The commander, standing before a vast holographic display of the Zirran fleet, issued orders with quiet authority, their mind always 2 steps ahead. The Zircon believe that their numbers will overwhelm us, the commander said, their voice calm but resolute. Let them think that, but it is not the size of the enemy's force that will determine the outcome, it is their inability to adapt. The commander had carefully studied the Zirran tactics, recognizing that their strength lay in their arrogance. They had never truly faced an opponent who was willing to play the long game, to buy their time and use unconventional strategies. Humanity was that opponent. The commander's plan was simple but brilliant. First, they would keep the Zircon guessing. The battleship would remain elusive, appearing only when it was necessary to deliver a strike that would cause the most damage. Each time the Zircon tried to corner the ship, they would find themselves outmaneuvered, as the human crew utilized a series of advanced cloaking devices and decoys that kept the Zircon constantly on edge. Humanity's battleship would never engage in a battle they couldn't win. Second, the commander used small precision strikes to weaken the Zircon key infrastructure, their supply lines, and their communication systems. By targeting strategic locations, humanity didn't just break the Zirran fleet, they broke the Zircon will to fight. The commander understood that without morale, a fleet was nothing but a group of ships, and the Zircon confidence was quickly turning into doubt. We'll make them doubt themselves, the commander murmured, their eyes scanning the battlefield. Once they questioned their ability to win, they will lose. As humanity's battleship continued its elusive strikes, the Zircon grew more frustrated. General Karen, who had led the charge to resist humanity's advance, could feel the pressure mounting. He had never seen an enemy fight this way, never seen an adversary so patient, so clever in its approach. Every time Karen's fleet moved to strike, the battleship would disappear, only to reappear in a different location, ready to deliver another devastating blow. It was clear that the Zircon were losing control. Their once unified fleet was now splintering, with some factions wanting to press on and others questioning whether they should negotiate. General Karen's frustration reached its peak as the Zircon failed to make any meaningful advances. His ships were becoming more scattered and his forces were running low on supplies. Thanks to the precision attacks orchestrated by the commander, in one final attempt to regain some semblance of control, Karen called for a massive assault on the human battleship. He believed that if they concentrated all their forces in one place, they could overwhelm humanity's technological advantage. The entire Zirran fleet would strike at once, hitting the human ship from all sides, but the commander had already anticipated this. Humanity's battleship had been carefully placed in a location designed to lure the Zircon in, and the commander had set the perfect trap. As Karen's fleet closed in, humanity's battleship engaged its close system once again disappearing from their scanners. The Zircon had walked right into the trap. The commander gave the order, and the battleship's weapons fired in quick succession. The Zurin forces divided and spread thin were hit with an intense barrage of energy blasts that took out key ships before they even had a chance to retaliate. The concentrated assault turned into chaos as ships collided, unable to coordinate or communicate properly due to the commander's earlier strikes on their communications. It was a devastating blow to the Zurin fleet, and the panic among the Zurin ranks was palpable. Kirin's desperate push had failed, and now the resistance he had fought so hard to rally was beginning to crumble. The Zircon had no choice but to reassess their entire strategy. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and outthink them at every turn. As the battle continued to rage, the commander remained calm, watching the Zircon falter under the weight of their own miscalculations. They knew that the battle wasn't over yet, but this was a turning point. Humanity had proven that they could hold their ground, that they could fight with a resolve. The Zircon had never anticipated the human fleet had not only survived, it had shown that it was capable of winning, and in the depths of the Zurin fleet, amidst the